we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here for our Rotary Global Grant Workshop. Welcome to the aggressive room. My name is Jen Best. I'm Director of National Fellowships. So our office is the place that advises students and supports them in this application process. There are a lot of people in this room here to help you in this process as well, starting with Ethan and Kendall, who are National Fellowship coordinators in our office. And then we're fortunate to have David Wolfer, who is a global grant recipient, returnee, back has done his thing and come back and is now continuing with his life. And then we have Claire Steiner, who is our current most recent winner of the global grant, so has not yet gone, but is ready and poised to go as soon as possible. So we'll have a chance to share some of their insight and answer some questions. Since there's only 3 of you, would you mind introducing yourselves a little bit so I know who I'm talking to and we can kind of format this presentation towards you. So. Awesome. All right, so we have a distinct public health bent to the options and interests that you have, which is great because that was David's kind of entry point. So we'll still rely on you, don't worry. But what that means is that there are different areas of focus, and so I will try and talk mostly about the public health direction, but then tell your friends about the other ones and get them excited too. So a little bit of overview of Rotary. So the Rotary Global Grant is sponsored by Rotary International, which is an international philanthropic organization that is poised to create this network of people to work together to better the world in a lot of different ways. And so we are very fortunate in Columbia that we have a very active district with the Global Grant. So and everything that we're saying in this session is about our particular district, right? So global grants are available in other districts as well, but the process that we will discuss in this one, which you're all eligible to apply through, it just makes it cleaner and simpler. So I think that they will be offering 1 grant this year. Last year they offered 1 grant. Previous years they've been offering 2 and 3. So I'm waiting to hear what the final word is, but I'm assuming it's all going. So that's the good news. What it is, the short version, is a grant for a year of graduate level study somewhere in the world in one of the 7 areas of focus that we'll talk about. And the funding amount is a minimum of $30,000 up to $50,000. And you present a budget as part of your application that demonstrates how you will spend that money. That's a consideration while you're thinking about where you want to go and how far money can go in different places in the world. Sometimes we have applicants who struggle to reach the $30,000 mark, for example, and other times we have students who struggle to keep it under $50,000. So it really just depends on what program you look at, what the rationale is for that as a location and a program, but that is the range that we're looking at for funding. Last year they added this emphasis on the environment, which is now we have a lovely new image, new pictures. They've redone these. So these are the areas of focus that Rotary is interested in supporting. And I will also preface this by saying global grants, from our perspective, are these scholarships for graduate level studies. There are other things that global grants can do. So this is why we don't direct you to the Rotary website for this, because it's geared towards Rotarians and what they offer and not towards a specific application process. But all of these things, so peace building and conflict prevention, disease prevention and treatment, which is where a lot of the public health interest comes in, as well as the maternal and child health. They've added hygiene to water, sanitation, and hygiene, which is good. They also do basic education and literacy, community economic development, and then the environment. So these are the areas in which Rotary is trying to support and spend its money. And their purpose in the grant is to support people to get the kind of education that they need to then go on and work in those fields to make these improvements. Right, that is the goal. Eligibility-wise, you just can't be a Rotarian, basically. Your parents can't be Rotarians. Your grandparents can't be Rotarians. Other than that, you should be good to go. It is a little bit of a recruiting tool. I mean, they hope that by participating in this, you will come to value what Rotary stands for and who Rotarians are, and hopefully one day would you yourself want to become a Rotarian, but that is not a requirement. why should you apply? Aside from the obvious of spending a year abroad, fully funded, I think one of the nicest things about the Rotary Scholarship is that it is very relationship driven, right? You are sponsored by a local Rotary Club. There are people who want to get to know you, who want to invest in you, who want to support you. And that is very unusual in terms of how clear that connection is. Most fellowships are not that personal, let's say. So it is actually very exciting to get to talk to people who are interested in the things that you are interested in and want to support that. So don't underestimate the value of just getting to know a local Rotary Club, okay? In terms of the application itself, having to figure out where you want to go and what you want to do and how you express that is super valuable as you think about your future, right? So learning how to clearly communicate, here's what I'm interested in, here are my skills that I currently have, here are the skills I'm hoping to gain, here's how the work I will ultimately do will support this, this particular area, all really beneficial in everything else that you do, whether you get the global grant or not, right? You want you to get it. Developing professional relationships with faculty, so letters of recommendation, advice and connection to programs around the world. You really can't do this without talking to faculty. And most faculty are really eager to talk with you about it and support you in it. So that is a benefit. Interviewing skills. So there is a district level interview for this. So essentially the application process is a formal application that you submit to your sponsoring club. They review it and then they pass it on to the district, and then the district does interviews. Historically, they have been in person and mandatory, but also with COVID, they have shifted to Zoom, which is a little awkward. I will say, David, that's really my fan. Claire, you survived it, right? So we can talk about how that was, but it gets a little interesting because what they typically do is there is a Friday evening sort of reception conversation, meet the Rotarians, meet each other, and then on the Saturday, there are your formal interviews. Everyone is asked the same questions. You get the questions in advance. The Friday night social, I think, is a little difficult to replicate on Zoom. I'll just say that from what I've heard. So I'm hoping they'll be in person this year, but I don't know. We'll see. And then finally, obviously potentially study the international environment and serve the local community. So get the grant. I don't know. Harrison, are you environment? Is that kind of the areas of focus? Probably. Okay. So everyone else is public health, so we're good. Sorry. It's all good. So what does the application look like? So A, you have to be sponsored by a local Rotary Club. So yes, to your question, we can talk a little about how you connect with the local Rotary Club and what that means. Every club in the district can sponsor up to 2 people. It's not one shot for everyone. You have to choose the graduate degree or coursework that you want to do at the foreign university, and you have to figure out details of that, what the classes will be, is there a thesis requirement, things like that. I'm going to say a word about this because most students and successful applicants are doing a grad degree, right? But technically, it's also coursework. David, you are such the perfect person to have in this meeting for all of the random details. So I'm going to use David as an example. So David, you applied to the Rotary grant to do coursework in public health in Uganda. And you ended up doing a master's in public health degree at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. That was a shame. You're, I think, the only person who applied just for coursework. And that was what he was accepted for, right? When he received the grant and was awarded it, that was the plan. What you're going to notice about the timeline here is that there is a lot of advanced work done. So the way that the timeline functions, you have this meeting is like interest meeting. The annual deadline for the local club, you submit your application to your sponsoring club by April 1st. They review it. They then help you finalize anything, fix anything, and then submission to the district now is July 1st. It used to be June 1st, not July 1st. Then you interview in August. You find out the results like the next day, basically. And then the grant covers not that year, but the next year. Okay. This is why we usually if you want to do this experience right after you graduate from undergrad, you apply in the April of your junior year. Find out before or like right at the beginning of your senior year you've gotten it, but then have an entire year to wait. Okay. So that's why in that entire year waiting, when you haven't actually applied to the program that you say you want to do, things like conversations and more investigations can happen and you're like, well, actually, that might not be the best fit. I found this other program that might work better. I'm not going to necessarily recommend that pathway as a plan, right? But know that it is an option. And again, that is a big result of the fact that this is a relationship-focused fellowship, right? If they award it to you, then the Rotarians are on your side and want to support you in your goals. And if you figure out that there's actually something that's a little bit different, or maybe that program didn't work out, they're willing to work with you. There's no guarantee, but they are willing to work with you. So I will just say that. You're the only person that's done that. No, it's not oops. Not an oops at all. It's a good example of like, we learned from you that it was possible, but also how to give better advice for how to find the program. So I say that because the application does have to say, this is the thing I want to do. Most cases, the grad degree doesn't have to be, could be coursework, but you have to have a reason for why you would just be doing coursework then, and that's fine. Make sure that your academic and professional goals fit into the area of focus that you've chosen. You need to think about what the goals of Rotary are in general and how your interests align with that. This is all about fit. Pretty much the whole application asks 10 different ways. How do you fit and align with Rotary's goals? You just ask the same question from different angles. And so it really is thinking about and looking at what those goals are. Some of that I think might be in the handout that you have, certainly, but when we get the materials from the district, there will be a lot of detail and you can see specifically what those goals are. And we'll show a few of them in a minute. They want to know what you plan to do after the scholarship, right? How does this fit into your future trajectory? Why is this a good idea? It requires 2 letters of recommendation. And because this is a scholarship for graduate study and going to a different location, you definitely want at least one of those recommendations to be a faculty member who can say, yes, you are going to be capable and excel in this grad program that you want to do. The second letter could also be that, and or could be someone who's talking about what you would be like in another country, in another environment, you know, learning, engaging with the community. So there's a little bit of flexibility in that. Transcripts, budget, interview. And we have some sample budgets you can look at. And often international schools will have a site for international students that will have a kind of a sample budget of what expenses would look like in that country for that year. So there are ways to find that out without having to go total Google crazy. Yes. Sure. Yeah, I don't think there's any requirement that they have to be at USC, certainly, or even in the US. Yeah. In English, they do write in English, but yeah. Questions about the application. And I think the yellow packet back there is the application. Questions, you can kind of see what's been asked. There's some word limits and requirements, but it's not terrible, I think. If anything, there's lots of space. So this is the quick overview. So the Global Grant Scholarship actually started in 2013. There used to be ambassadorial scholarships that were funding for undergrad study abroad. So then they switched over and we started having winners, which is great. So Rachel was our first person to win, and she went to King's College in London and was sponsored by the Forest Acres Rotary Club. Then we have, oh, look, it's David. Got the MPH at University of Cape Town, and you're sponsored by 5 points. Then Catherine Glenn did her degree at Queen's University in Belfast under Peace and Conflict Prevention, and she was sponsored by Columbia Capital Rotary Club. Then in 2017, we had 2 winners. Woohoo! We had Ryan Anderson and Rachel Lunsford. So Ryan, followed David's footsteps. We're going to see a little pathway that actually David plotted to the MPH program in Cape Town. So all you public health people, no pressure, but lots of good things to say about that. So Ryan's finished that and he's in med school now. And then Rachel is going to Cambridge to do international relations, sponsored by 5 Points and Spring Valley, respectively. Yeah. Then Hansen was our 2018 scholar, and so he did a master's of epidemiology down in Columbia, the other Columbia, 2 O's. And he was sponsored by 5 Points. 5 Points is a big sponsor, I would just say. They're very close to campus and have a good meeting time, so I think that's also a factor in their sponsorship. 2019, Grace got the global grant to do her degree in migration, culture, and global health from Queen Mary University in London. She ended up postponing for a year due to COVID, but should be doing that now. She is sponsored by Columbia Capital. 2020, we had 2 scholars. Oh, look, JD, MPH at Cape Town. It's a theme. And then Emily is going to do her MPH in Ghana, actually. Sponsored by Vista Knights and Columbia Rotary. I think Vista Knights is a newcomer to the world of the Rotary Global Grant. I don't think either of them, I know JD's not left yet. I don't know if Emily has left yet. Again, because you win and then you have a year. So Claire is here because there's Claire. This is Claire Maskless on the screen. So Claire is going to be going to do international development studies in Thailand, which is very exciting, and was sponsored by Columbia Rotary. So just like to show you that our school, we are not the only school that sends applicants to the district, but we have a pretty consistent record, and we know the Rotarians and they know us. And they are very friendly, very kind people who I know really wish that they could sponsor more students than we do. I do not envy them their decisions, let's say, in terms of selecting scholars. So, so technically, it is a single-year grant. 12 months in length to spend the money, right? So, again, David, pioneer in this field because the MPH in Cape Town is a 2-year program. Full 2 years? Year and a half. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the magic that you wrought to make your grant possible?
So there is a gray area that I would pay for 18 months of grad school, period, and still pay that $1,000. Rotary is not eligible of $50,000. They again are very related.
So it's not you can't do a 2-year program with this. It is technically they will not fund 2 years. They give you funding for the year. And then how you manage to use that, there's some wiggle room. But yeah, you get it once and that's it. So it's not you don't reapply for a second. Is that how Ryan, I'm assuming that's how Ryan did it too. It's just, how else would he do it? Okay. So further reason to look at the MPH in Cape Town, we know that this works. Because yeah, especially with MPHs, they are often 2-year programs. So very fair question. If it doesn't stretch, then you're on the hook for the rest of it, or there might be other fellowships that you could apply to. Single application. If you don't get it, yes, you can keep it. Yes, right. So you could do the first year on your own and then apply for the second year. That might be. That's interesting because you would still be applying before you go. I find the timeline very odd, and not every district does this timeline. So even Rotary International doesn't have this as their specific, but I think it has to do with budgetary planning. The district needs to know how much they're going to need for that year so that they can fundraise. So, good questions. What are they looking for in an applicant? So, connection between your career goals and the area of focus, and the educational goals that you have and the area of focus. Always area of focus. Always come back to that. They're looking for this long-term commitment to measurable, sustainable change. They also don't want you to just like drop into a place, have an experience, and then leave and not make a difference in that community, and leave something that will last a little bit beyond yourself. One thing I would say is, if you've got a situation where you're not going to hit $30,000 in your budget, they do allow you to build in a community engagement project and include anything costs around that in the budget as well. But even if you are hitting that, I find this interesting, they don't ask a question in the application about community engagement project, but they do want you to kind of have that and be able to talk about it in the interview. Like, what else will you do? As you're thinking about where to go and where to look for a program, there's a couple of different ways to approach this. You may already know exactly where you want to go, and that's great. You may know what type of educational program you're looking for, but not know where would be a good location. In that case, you may want to chat with some of your faculty mentors and see what connections they know and the reputations that they're aware of programs around the world. Or if there's a particular place, but you're not really sure what the best program would be, you can also go that way and kind of look at the universities and what programs are available and the reputations and things like that. So it really, you do need to go someplace that has a Rotary club. I also would say that. But Rotary is an international organization, has clubs all over the place. But they do want to see that you can connect with the local club there as well and participate in the work that they're doing. And so sometimes that can also help as you're thinking about ways that you can get involved in the community. If you find a local Rotary club, like what are the projects that they're working on? How does that align with your interests? How can you build off of that? So it's not like you have to go in and do your own thing in isolation. It is, again, relational, right? What is already happening? What can you contribute to and grow? So there's that component. And then ideally, all of the stuff that you're showing about your previous experience and activities supports the fact that you will be successful in what you're proposing to do and in the long-term care plans that you have. This is really a holistic perspective on you and all of the things that you do. Sorry, that still says 6, not 7. I've tried to, like, I caught almost every slide that says 6, but they added environment here, so probably just for you. So in general, what they're looking for in an applicant, so leadership skills and potential, so leadership attributes, I would say, proven record of success in your academic field or vocation, right? So you do not have to be a 4.0 student, but you need to show that you will be successful in the graduate program that you are indicating you want to do. You need to show a commitment to community service, right? This shouldn't be the first time you ever thought about helping people. Maybe not be the best fit if that's the case. Having well-defined and realistic goals, so thinking through what you can accomplish in this year's experience and the next year's experience, in having that relationship with Rotary. Concrete ideas for advancing within your field. So what does it mean? Like, what are the steps? What's the long-term goal? What are the steps to get there? And then the sincerity about maintaining a lifelong relationship with Rotary, right? This is a big investment in you, and so they don't want you to just disappear afterwards. They want you to sort of report back and contribute and consider becoming a Rotarian yourself. Although again, not a requirement. All right, this is now a bunch of slides with some details. So I'm gonna pause for a second because it gets a little nitty-gritty. To just see what questions you might have, but also maybe to ask David and Claire to talk a little bit about. David, I might ask you to talk a little bit more about your experience like on the grant since you've done it, and then Claire, because you went through it recently, to maybe talk about the application process and like how you got involved with the Rotary Club, what the Zoom interview looked like, things like that. So I will start with you because it's the most recent.
I was want to the Columbia Rotary Club, but I think that maybe like there were months like I actually didn't find out really about Rotary until like March or April. Yeah, you should do it. So, what I did was I used contact the fellowship office, reached out to our there I here studying this and program and I was going to talk about it. I included my resume, email, and I feel like that was really helpful. Okay, like she looks like she would like be able to do like this kind of fun program. Met with somebody and then ended up doing this stuff. And right after I had a meeting with my team from I did a much just like, like an hour. And then there's also like other usual like the center. Three of those lectures. And then after that, I started my application. I think for me, it was just like basically like about draft the application to April 1st. We also did need engineer level recommendations by then. And then all of that was in July. And the final deadline was. So throughout the summer, I went to the fellowship office, edited my application a whole bunch before I submitted it. And my review was a little bit more like hands off. I know other reviews have been on the application. I think for me, but yeah, I just worked in the fellowship office until July, submitted all my materials, and then the actual interview weekend was in June and sometime in August. I think it was August. And there's that night where basically it was like I think 2 hours. I guess like you're all calling it remember, and everyone else was fine, which is a little bit intimidating. But definitely like I think it's important, especially when you're in like a group meeting with everybody, to make sure like people are more or less like what your personality is. Like, I was being serious with my food, I was also like that's what you just serious for my activities. The next day we had set 30 minutes time slot for the interview. Whereas basically this panel Rotary clubs like the district asking preset like 7 questions I think it was. And it basically just had like 30 minutes. You can take however long you wanted for any questions. We had to answer all the questions. And yeah, they didn't like make too many comments or anything. They just ask the questions, waiting for your answers. I think I actually found out that I got the scholarship maybe like 5 hours after I had my interview. Like, it was kind of a crazy turnaround. But now it's really nice because all I have to do is apply to my graduate program. Yeah, that was nice.
Questions? There's an important point about going to Rotary meetings, right? Like they have established meetings, they have their own agenda. You are literally there for like the 2 minutes to introduce yourself and to meet folks, and then you're just there for the rest of the meeting. It's not a meeting about you, which can sound daunting. I would be daunted by that. Yes.
And I think for me, like I met with Emily
Mhm.
on for me. And we were at the coffee, and I think that's why she gave me that. Ultimately, I was looking at a bunch of different programs. Like, they were global leaders in like the field I wanted to go to, but I don't have a personal connection to any of those programs, and I think that's where I. But I think that's like, very what you're doing to the field. We did a lot.
There's kind of 2 ways to look at it sometimes. So one is about a big focus on the program and the procedures of the program or the reasons to do that. But I do, and that can work. But I also think that our Rotary district seems to kind of be a little bit more interested in you choosing locations where not only can you get a good education, but you can also be involved in the community, doing the kind of work in the kind of field that you want to do. So choosing a place where you can do that. I mean, obviously, in the list of students that we went through, there were some people who were going to the UK or Ireland for their fellowship, which is a very different experience than people going to Thailand or South Africa. But in both cases, they were able to make the case that there were populations and communities to involve themselves with that were connected to the area of focus that they were interested in, and make the case for that. So, David, how did you make the case? How did you switch from Uganda to South Africa? What was it like in South Africa?
Yeah, so I heard about this several years ago, but it was interesting going to Uganda. I actually had non-classroom credit to actually like this through it. Why don't I go spend 3 months out of nursing and for the time? So I moved there, I met work in the hospital, who's there. So grad school, I realized every 4 years, president comes out. Social media. So I said, okay, what do I do? Take time, it was an email. That was, it was email, I was crazy to go on an application. I chose Cape Town because the leading university is weird juxtaposition. You can think about the Atlantic and the ocean. All the intermixing of the Gulf world. So there are millionaires and there are 3 miles away. So there is almost every healthcare worker that has PE there. They don't even do their classes PE.
Oh,
But then they also have 25% of all they roll that out on large scale. They have done stuff that government is wild, somewhat corrupt, it's still the government that got them elected. They're talking about it. But it is a fascinating picture of all these European towns that a block away looks like the center of Africa. So I don't know what else I would absolutely have to pay for it. Here's the case. A great place to learn. A lot of professors there. And actually, through a lot of these professors,
wow, beyond the general population. I'm sold.
it is Cape Town.
And it's Cape Town.
Those people now.
Yeah, I mean, like your blog and the pictures that you sent back, I was like, wow, let's just all go. Let's just all move to Cape Town. How did you and how have you maintained your relationship with Rotary?
So I think I first made relationships with Luke, Rotary Club. But to just be aware that they're very, very. That is kind of good. They're slow to serve. But just saying, have to be able to serve. This is for you. So I just had coffee with Louis at school and just chatted it up and figured it out. Like one of the things. They are somewhat off their own.
Yeah.
So just be out. So once you are in the country of adopted by Rotary family and its mom and like the talk, and he also get adopted by. So I went to every meeting on Mondays. Well, older white South Africa. My 82-year-old friend who said that I that was just awesome. He invited to their houses for Christmases and stuff. Better since coming back to South Carolina, I went to I've spoken to them. So I'm still kind of figuring.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah. I'm still figuring it out.
I think everyone, yeah. It's certainly fine. Yeah, I mean, because it is, it's about fit with the club too, right? And so some clubs have different focuses than others. Some are more familiar with Rotary, with the global grant than others. What you don't want to do is like send out requests to all 10 clubs and see what happens. Like be a little strategic. But yes, I mean, it in my experience, it sort of varies in terms of if you're going to a meeting, makes the club assume that you're applying through them versus clubs that are like, we're getting lots of questions, and so we're gonna have to figure out how to decide, and so it's fine that you come. So it just varies. So it's not forbidden at all, but you kind of want to feel it out as you're going. So I might start with one, and then if you don't hear anything back, then you could maybe try another one. And so I wouldn't try to do them all at once. There you go.
I feel like as long as you're asking them not right before April, that like, I think I was asking you the second week of March, and so like lots.
Yeah, there was a point when 5 Points actually instituted their own, like, this is how we will select our two because they were getting so many requests, but no other club really had that. And then it was like one time 5 Points sort of needed it. And then we learned that too. And so we also started to try to like spread y'all out. And be like, well, we know that, so we try and keep a record. So let us know who you're talking to. And that way we can be like, oh, you've already got Forest Acres locked down. So you should go to Spring Valley and you should go to Columbia. And we can kind of help navigate that a little bit too. So you're not on your own. Okay, so I'm going to go through real quick programs that fit the area of focus. This, I think I gave you the handout for this. That handout is the old handout. I apologize, I did not print the most recent one. I thought I had. So we'll make sure you get that one because this one, that one in your hands does not include the environment. Sorry. This doesn't include the environment either, I don't think. So apologies. But I think I pulled it out. So no one in here was really interested in peace and conflict resolution or basic education and literacy. So I'm going to kind of skip over those. What we're talking about here is the kinds of programs that they're looking for funding. So for disease prevention and treatment, public health, and advanced degrees in nursing and medicine, prime areas. And then if maternal and child health is what you're interested in, epidemiology, nutrition, global health, public health, health promotion degrees. I kind of feel like you could switch those as well, right? So, and I'm also almost wondering if I should have switched them too. But so when you're looking for, so it's very important. This is the alignment between your interests and what Rotary is trying to fund. So that's why we highlight these to make sure that you're not picking a program that they're like, that doesn't make any sense. It's not what we're looking to fund. With public health issues, it's not that hard. It gets fuzzier in some of the other areas. So I think you're pretty set. Like economic and community development, it's a whole bunch of things like we will not fund this, but we will fund that. So don't worry about that. Harrison, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to pull up the new version that has the environment in there because I promise it's there. So this is the overview real quick of the application cycle. So right now, looking for qualified applicants. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Sponsoring clubs screen and select applicants in January through April. This is that sounds way more intense than it is, right? So January through April, find yourself a club. The April 1st deadline for submitting to your club, as Claire mentioned, I mean, that's the deadline that the district sets. But as long as you're in conversation with your club and talking with them about your application, they may be totally open to being like, as long as we know by April 1st that you're applying, we'll keep working with you and you don't need your letters or whatever. So our advice from the office is coming from the perspective of the district of like, this is the date, but you can be working with that club and that things can be more fungible. The July 1st deadline is not fungible. That is a hard deadline. So each club can submit 2 applications, and then here's all the stuff that they list out. There's a lot of back end work. So they might have some extra things that they have questions about or want you to fill out to submit by July 1st, but it's pretty basic. And then they also are supposed to be helping prepare you for that interview. We also can help with that. Different clubs have different levels of support, so it just kind of depends. And then the district interviews are in mid-August. I put the attendance mandatory. I used to say attendance in person is mandatory when it was in person. With Zoom, who knows? So I'm just like, attendance is mandatory, whatever format they do. But if they go back to in person, you have to be there in person. They don't do a split. They don't do a hybrid version of it, at least not yet. So it do feed you well, though. So I kind of hope that they go back to that. So then what we do, yes, yeah. They vary. Most often they've been in Charleston. Yeah. And being in Charleston also, so if they go back to being in person and they're in Charleston, sometimes sponsoring clubs will help if you need any like gas money, if you need to stay overnight. If they won't or can't do that, you can talk to us because our office can also help with some of that. So it's not meant, if they are in person, there's not meant to be a financial burden on you to go and be well prepared for that interview. So I'll just say that. But yeah, they've rotated around. They were in, I feel like, I don't know if they've been in Columbia since I can remember, maybe once. College of Charleston was like a big powerhouse applications, but I think Lou has retired or stepped away from that. So they're like Rotarian champion on campus is no longer doing it. And so they don't have any applicants. They don't have someone as forcefully saying they must be in Charleston, which is, I mean, Charleston's nice. It's not the end of the world. But I'm just wondering if they're going to keep it with Zoom because it's easier to gather everyone, but it's not as fun. And they are very sociable people. So I kind of want them to get back into this. So anyway, so how we can help, right? So you're all here, we do these info sessions. We will be happy to meet with you one-on-one. We're happy to look at drafts of the applications. We're happy to connect you with alumni. Claire is officially a fellowship peer, well, semi-officially a fellowship peer mentor. We will pay for you to have coffee with Claire. If you want to have coffee with David, we would also pay for that. So, you know, they're just, it's so hard. We ask so much of you. We do have previous winning applications on file if you want to look at them as examples. I don't recommend that you start at that point. Work on your own stuff. But for example, if you need to see a budget, we have some samples of what those look like. If you want to see how someone connects their interests to the specific goal with Rotary that they've identified, we have some examples of that. So that's available. We'll help you practice for those interviews. We will help you connect with Rotary clubs if you need that. And we connect to your alumni. There we go. Next steps. I'm sorry, there's so much text on this slide. I'm breaking all the rules that I have about PowerPoint right now. So really, think about where you want to go. What do you want to study? How does that fit into the 7 areas of focus? Piece of cake. That's the easy part, right? Utilize the contacts that you have with the faculty on campus if you're trying to figure out, because there's no place that can point you to a website where like, here's where all the best programs in the world in education are. That doesn't exist. So it does take some legwork. So use the people that are in your life who are mentors to ask their advice and make those connections. Seek out the sponsoring Rotary Club. Request the application from us so we have it. It's not available online. You need to reach out to us and say, hey, I want to apply for Rotary. We have this intent to apply form that you can fill out. You can also just email us and ask for it. That's fine. And then we also have a Blackboard organization for National Fellowship Advising, and there is information in that about Rotary. So after this meeting, we'll make sure that all 3 of you have access to that specific folder, and that's where we'll be putting the new materials that we get once the district shares them. Come meet with us, go to a local Rotary meeting, talk to fellowship your mentor. Also on campus, there is the Rotaract Club, which is the college level version of Rotary. You can be a member of Rotaract and be eligible for the Global Grant. And so that can be something that you might want to look into if you just want to get familiar with sort of the Rotarian ethos, right? They're a service organization on campus, very friendly as well. So that's just something, it's not required, but it doesn't hurt to express an interest in that either. Here are our current U of SD Rotary contacts. We use that to retire. They connect in July, I think. I don't say that. I'm not sure it's public information and it's recorded, so we won't edit that part out. Anyway, Jim Morris, Fred Meyer, and John Peterson, and those are the Rotary clubs. Wasn't sure if Jim was going to be here today or not. So we've got 2 from the Rotary Club of Columbia and then 1 from Forest Acres, but there are more. These are just on campus. So they are, and they are not meant as like send them your essay to review. They are there to help you connect with the Rotary Club, or they can be an introduction for you to that particular club or other Rotarians. So, and then on our website, how to make an appointment with them. Yeah. So I'm going to stop that and then I'm going to pull up. So this is the updated version of the goal areas of focus. So no one else has changed, I don't think. They just added the environment. So I'm scrolling down here. Maybe, oh, don't do this to me. Does this ever do this to you where PDFs just stop showing like the last pages? Yes, okay. I'm gonna have to do this. We'll talk. We'll talk. We'll do that. I'm gonna still do it. Thank you. I didn't make it up. Everything is fine. I'll put that back up since the screen share is happening. I want it to start. We'll just cut this part out when we edit. So that's the presentation. What questions, comments, thoughts, ways we can be helpful? You've got great people in the room as resources who also, I mean, we can shut this down and then we can just ask your questions one-on-one with us. So anything sort of big picture, it was a lot of information I just gave you. Yeah. We will follow up. We will send you an email. It'll have some links. We'll make sure you have Blackboard access. Get some resources. Talk with Claire or David. Encourage you to make an appointment because I think the more we get to know you and the more we talk with you about what your interests are, the better we can advise you and help support you on this and anything else too, because it's not just only Rotary, right? It's like if this is the kind of thing we want to do, there's probably some other fellowships that we might want to talk about too. But we just like to talk to students. So come do that. Awesome.